I hope you enjoyed Chloe's talk. It's a nice segue to what's about to come. We'll talk about the human aspects of cybersecurity. We have a panel, and I'm sure it's going to be an interesting panel to watch because we already had some heated conversation on this topic. There are three main things that we'd like to share with you today. Are humans the weakest link? Are there strategies we could use to raise awareness on cybersecurity related issues? And what are some of the things we could do to help build a brighter future? But first, I want to ask our panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about the things they are currently working on. Should we start with Andrei?
Hello, everybody. I hope you can hear me. My name is Andrei Ordan. I've been with Securus for almost 7 years. Before that, I've worked for 11 years in a place that I can neither confirm nor deny. With Securus right now, I'm responsible for what's called the advanced analysis team. So the people, the forensicators, the people that do the, let's say, the tier 3 security operations, as well as with the threat hunters that we have in both Romania and the US. Thank you for inviting me here.
Should we move on to Jay? Hi.
Hey, Andrada. Hey, guys. Hey, DefCamp. Hello again. Actually, we've met yesterday. So I'm Alex J Balan. I work as Security Research Director at Bitdefender. I'm mainly involved in 3 major projects. One of them, since the previous speaker mentioned it, is the bug bounty program. I started it in December 2015, and I'm happy to say it was one of the best decisions that the company has ever made. So yes, bug bounty programs rule. I'm also managing vulnerability research on IoT. So we publish a lot of papers, and the talk that I did yesterday was out of that team. So just if you check out the Bitdefender Labs website, you're going to see some of the papers that we've published. And what else? Oh, yeah. And a pen testing team, a red team that kind of goes berserk in the infrastructure, hacking stuff. And it's quite successful at it. So, yeah.
Nice. Dan?
Unmute myself. I hope you can hear me. I'm Dan, and I'm actually part of the other side of them, kind of like a blue teaming background. I can confirm I worked for Kaspersky for like 6 years now. I've been working for like more than 6 years, and I'm part of the threat intelligence team. So what we're doing is we're doing research on attacks and highly advanced APTs and attacks against like big banks like financial sector, etc. So I'm in the blue team part. Hopefully I can provide some insight, and I also thank you. I'm also really happy to be here. Unfortunately, I wished I could drink with all of you live on the DefCamp offline event, but hopefully next year we'll meet.
Thank you for coming. Radu, would you also like to introduce yourself and tell us about a little bit about what you do?
Nice introduction. What can I say anymore? I'm just a security guy working in this field probably for the last, I don't know, 16, 17 years, lost count. And yeah, a little bit of red team, a little bit of purple team, and now focusing a little bit more on the human element part of cybersecurity. And in the end, in my opinion, that's where it all starts. So looking for the discussion today.
That's great. Around here, some people might say that humans are the weakest link. And I was wondering if we could talk a little bit about this. When are people the weakest link, and how? I know that there has been some arguing over this topic. Is there anyone who would like to start?
I can start if you want.
Yeah.
Basically, I think that throughout our entire history of thousands of thousands of years, humans, I believe humans are genuinely nice. But unfortunately, and actually fortunately for us, that from time to time, there are some people who are trying to test the boundaries, who are not following the rules. It says you shouldn't go there. Like somebody tries to go there, somebody will try to go there. So because of that, inherently, security, we could live in a world without security, but because of those challengers and people who are driving us towards a better future, we have people who are testing the boundaries, so they will always try to push the limits. So because of that, we need to set some security practices.
Yeah, thank you.
Go
Jay,
next.
yeah, Jay, what do you think?
So first of all, I think that Dan's opinion is very enlightening, if not a little bit philosophical.
We don't mind.
Yeah, that's why we wanted to start, you know?
But it's really cool. It's really cool. So I'm going to go into philosophy a little bit as well. I think that we sometimes have the arrogance of forgetting how little we actually know. And with that in mind, my argument is this. We should not trust even ourselves, right? And we are people in security. We all know that, right? Right, guys? Right. We should not trust ourselves. So that means that we need the technology to prevent stuff that can happen to us. You know, you cannot blame the user. It's at any level, no matter how skilled or unskilled we are, there's a chance that we're going to have a weak moment. No matter how trained we are, there's a chance that we're going to have a moment of weakness. Even us, the almighty security experts, let alone the HR director or the finance director, you know? So I think that we should proper tool and the infrastructure to make sure that we catch the moment when they are attacked and we catch the moment when they are compromised. So I definitely believe that blaming the user and feeling that the user is the weakest link is going to fundamentally create blind spots in your infrastructure. I think it's actually damaging to your security posture to believe that. I think that the weakest link, for example, in an infrastructure, one of the weakest links is outdated assets that cannot be phased out because of business reasons, because the business cannot phase out the outdated assets and you have like 5-year-old code on them. Statistically speaking, with organizations that I've worked with, that was definitely their weakest link and the lowest hanging fruit when trying to hack them. So yeah, that's my point of view on the matter.
Just like the customer is always right, we might have something like the user is always right, and we shouldn't necessarily blame them.
Well, you know,
is that what you're saying?
Dr. House said everybody lies, you know, and you should never trust the patient when they describe their symptoms or whatever. And with the same mindset, you should never trust the user. No matter how much you're going to train the HR director, no matter how much you're going to train those people in marketing, they're still going to suck at security. It's a given. So you have to constantly run phishing campaigns against them for training purposes. Yes, that's right. But they will click on stupid stuff. And this is why you're going to have a solution to prevent the moment when they click on stupid stuff. Because otherwise, if you relied on them, why heavy security solutions at all in the infrastructure? Let alone the fact that when you have over 500 or 1,000 people, the chance of having 10% of, let's call them uneducated and uninspired people is really, really, really high. So you should start and work. You should work under the assumption that at least 10%, and I'm being very generous here, of your employees are completely security uneducated.
Okay, I'm going to pass this to Radu. You have a super long and diverse experience when it comes to cybersecurity. What are your 2 cents on this topic?
Yeah. I really wanted to say, because I had initially the feeling that Jay was going on saying that people are not the weakest link, but then he came back to the idea that they are somehow the weakest link, and that was also my point of view. Because yeah, definitely we need technology, we need all sorts of solutions to help us protect what happens at that moment. But in the end, it all comes to the person, because if we're looking at all security solutions that there are now on the market, and there are plenty of them, they protect basically the access to some data. But if you can get that data without even having to access you personally, any computer, any network, any bit of information directly, but you have someone which you convince him to tell you that information, in most cases, you don't need access to the system if you need basically that person, that specific information. And here, not to be misunderstood, I'm not speaking about making him reveal the password, because in that case, there are plenty of solutions, FA and whatsoever, that could still protect this. But if you really need a particular information, you're gonna still get it from the person itself. And this reminds me of, okay, it's a Hollywood movie, but still some good insights in there, which is called, I think, The Fall or something like that. And in that movie, basically the wife of a CEO of a bank or something like that is getting, or the whole family is getting kidnapped in order to ask him to give all the access and definitely that we should start from the human. And now to bring us some can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can
bring out
even better than previously.
All right, cool. To bring some light from my point of view on this topic is we should look a little bit in history, Jay, and then we're going on philosophical issues. I'm going a little bit back to history. And speaking about history, well, the first guy which described what is a cyber system was, I don't know, not many people know, but there was a Romanian guy. It was Ștefan Dobleja, which defined it in the law of feedback, which was in 1938. It was long before other guys even started putting something on paper related to that. And starting from that initial cyber system that he was defining the law of feedback, it was describing that the first cyber system that exists is the human being with his inputs and his outputs, his sensors and his reactions. So looking at this point of view, that's why from my point of view, I'm looking at everything that we developed. Now we're doing what? We're doing a video conference using some technologies which are helping our own cyber system to be extended. You can hear me, you can see me, so your ears and eyes are extended by this. But in the end, if I'm gonna start talking shit here, you're gonna hear this. Okay, if someone doesn't intervene on the way and change the package and all that. But that's why I really think that there is a big focus that needs to be put on the human. And we're looking on, Jay was saying also earlier about IoT, and we're speaking about isolated networks, and we have the famous case of Stuxnet, where it was an isolated network. How that USB drive arrived in there, it was definitely a human. So I'm really an advocate of the cybersecurity. I'm really an advocate of the cybersecurity, starting from the person, and definitely going afterwards, using all the technologies to help him on achieving that.
Thank you so much. Let me quickly go to Andrei. What's your take on this? Are people the weakest link? When? How? Where?
So I think that either approach is dangerous in itself. If people aren't the weakest link, then they're devoid of personal responsibility, which is super dangerous. I mean, In the same way, I'm not responsible for crossing the street and getting hit by a car. Like there needs to be, we operate in a world that has a lot of cyber in it. And in order for us to do that, we need to be aware of at least a bare minimum set of rules. And I have basically, I'm going to get killed now, but I have two examples. I have my mom and my mother-in-law. And my mom, who's like 71, she's super tech savvy. And she's like, she has her games, she has her computer, she has her AV and whatnot. She phones like, hey, I received this stupid email. Like, should I click on it? Like, no, don't. My mother-in-law, not so much. So I do most of her stuff. So there needs to be a level of personal responsibility, even in the HR department, even in the financial department. That's one point. On the other hand, there also needs to be a comprehensive approach to risk, and because irrespective of how good of a defense you put in place, and Radu's example with Stuxnet was great. Some say that the person that put the thumb drive into the network and basically compromised the internal network was an asset. It's not confirmed. Nobody's going to confirm it for at least the next 40 years. But how many of these organizations run an insider threat program? How many of these organizations at very high level run a validation program of sorts? It's like, how do I know that? And I don't know if you know, but there are some forums on the dark. There's like a super weird bug, because like I see Radu and I see Dan's icon where Radu's face should be. So it's like super funny. So the powers that be are working. But jokes aside, there are instances and there are documented cases where adversaries on various forums, they offer money to employees to give them access into the network. So how do you defend against that? Those would be like, this would be like, let's ponder a little bit. Personal responsibility. How do we implement an end-to-end program? And how do we make sure that we cover all our bases? Because the most damaging attacks and the most damaging intelligence failures, overall, not cyber, have been insider threats.
Well, can I ask you something? I think that the way to approach this is exactly by asking the questions that you just asked. You know? But the reason you're asking the questions that you just asked is because you don't trust the user, because the user can get compromised.
So yes, the user can get compromised, but the solution is not always in tech.
But the fact that you're asking the questions will enhance your security and reduce the chances of getting compromised by the users. So I think that you're taking the great steps towards enhancing the security and reducing the chances of getting compromised. So GG.
I would also like to jump to Andra, because she has a somewhat, hi, I'm glad you could make it. She has a somewhat different background than you guys. The four of you are mainly security researchers, but I would argue that Andra is closer to the user because she's doing a lot of marketing and content writing when it comes to cybersecurity. What's your take on this?
So, hey, everyone. Thank you for having me, and sorry about being late. Throughout all of my work, so besides, I know that cybersecurity on the tech side hates marketing and sales, and for good reason too, because most of it is not that good. But there are, there are exceptions to the rule, and I hope to bring some of that today. So there's a lot of psychology and neuropsychology and everything that's, related to marketing, because what we're all trying to do together is to kind of stimulate behavioral change, which only happens when we truly understand what the context of the user is like, whether they're employees or, people on the internet facing all of the things that we're talking about here, not just at DefCamp, but also beyond it. So to me, the human is the weakest link, I think, is one of those stereotypes that we should stop kind of, proliferating. We should stop using this phrase for a simple reason, because it makes people defensive. It makes people feel inadequate. It makes them feel incompetent. It makes them feel stupid, and they will never, ever be receptive to a message included in any sort of cybersecurity training, no matter how good, fun, or entertaining it is. If you tell them, and people keep hearing from cybersecurity experts that they are the weakest link, they're the most incompetent part of the system, they will feel they will instantly reject all other messages that follow up after this experience. So that's why I believe a lot in kind of leading with empathy and getting people to trust us. But getting people to trust us is a matter of understanding what they care about. They're not cybersecurity experts. Most likely they will never become not just experts, but maybe even not savvy to the point where we would want them to become, for their own sake and for the sake of the industry in general. So I don't believe that this phrase helps us in any way. I think that there are so many cliches in cybersecurity that people just use because they're handy and, just very kind of close by, but they don't mean anything to the rest of the people. And what I constantly try to do is bridge the gap between all of the great work that people do in cybersecurity, whether they're technical experts or whether they work in design or they're product managers or they're building companies or teams or whatever it is that they're doing, and kind of show people that the ones that are behind the screens and behind all of these software solutions really care about them. Otherwise, they wouldn't do all of this complex and difficult work. But language matters a lot, and how we say these things to people matters a lot, and it has a bigger emotional impact than we realize. And I think that the whole conversation around emotion, which is so deeply rooted in our biology, is sometimes too often left out of cybersecurity conversations, especially in terms of training, because people need to kind of know, besides you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. We should get them personally invested in training, and and like you mentioned, they need to feel a responsibility, but they don't know what that responsibility looks like if they don't understand like the bigger, larger scale implications of their work, and if they don't understand how learning a new skill or a new concept really makes them better for themselves, how it plays into their personal strengths. We need to use cybersecurity to elevate their own abilities and make them feel good about themselves. When you feel good about yourself, you're most likely to learn new stuff, make an extra effort, talk to other people about it, pay attention in the long run, and not just be like one thing that comes across your radar and then it's gone. So there's a lot in psychology and neuropsychology that can help us bridge this gap. But we can start by changing our language and changing the way that we talk about things, because we're all prone to failure and to mistakes. No matter how good we think we are, we all have blind spots, we all have biases. And I think that it's important to be aware of those and to remember that this happens to everyone, and that we're not good plumbers, we're not good at all of the jobs ever, while we may be, faster to learn. So just cultivating that ability to be empathetic and to really think, why don't these people care? We can start from the simple question: why don't they care? Why can't we get through to them? Why doesn't all of this effort stick? There's a lot to dig in there. I know that we can possibly cover not even like a tiny percentage, but I hope that this comes useful and that it helps, kind of maybe trigger a line of thinking around these things.
Yeah, you made some great points and mentioned a couple of things that we're going to try to touch on a little bit later. One of those is empathy, but based on what you said, there's something we do at the radio when we introduce new information. We do it in a way that would make our listeners feel they are smart. As you said, we don't want the public to feel that they are not good enough to understand something, or they are not good enough to do something. I know that Dan has a comment or a question on this. Please go ahead.
I just want to completely agree with Andra and completely agree with everybody else said before, and just want to like share with you a small like a small tactic that we do, and some of our listeners here might know that with Andrada and with Alexandra, we were doing like a training for journalists that happened last week, and it's happening like this week as well. The idea is that whenever I meet like, or that's my tactic, whenever I meet some new persons, I don't want to tell them that it's you, because of you, you are the weakest link, but instead, you know, we have to acknowledge the fact that in the past, people were the weakest link. And what can we do? Of course, we can change this idea. We can say like, okay, let's get another motto. Let's get another. Let's improve our advice. And what can you do to change yourself instead of not become the weakest link? Because that happened in the past. This was in the past. Let's change that. So the idea is, what can you do in order to improve yourself, not to become the weakest link? And I think the first step is, like our listeners right now, just join DefCamp, you know, and see what other people are saying.
Okay, Dan, but the question here would be, why should I do it?
Yes, that's a really good question. I think for starters, you need to like try to at least improve yourself, because there are some ways in somehow somebody will try to trick you, and I would just mention social engineering. Technology will never be able to like, or maybe it might be, but
I'm just saying it's a big challenge, and this is going to be the next topic, I think, because we have difficulties convincing even technical people like developers to, you know, to change the way they code and to fix stuff like fundamental architectural issues. And technical people, you know.
I think people need to.
Developers are a special breed of people. Let's get serious. Like among us, they are a special breed.
I think people have to understand why something is important and why they should do it, and how this is going to make them smarter. And I'm going to go back to Andra right now, because I know that you're working on a podcast on empathy, and you're touching on empathy and compassion. Can these be used to raise awareness when it comes to cybersecurity issues? Can this help build bridges between experts and the general public? And maybe also, what are some of the lessons that you've learned so far?
Yes,
by doing this this specific podcast.
Thanks for that. So this kind of came as a result of the fact that I've seen in the past few years conversations switch around mental health in the cybersecurity industry into building skills that help amplify your technical skills, whether it's communication, whether it's the ability to write clearly, which is also a byproduct of thinking clearly. And kind of what I see, you know, seniors in the industry trying to do after they've seen, you know, all of these repetitive issues that cybersecurity keeps dealing with, is try to kind of build that empathy muscle so they can translate things into, you know, simpler and things that resonate more with their audiences, whether they're developers, whether they're just, you know, bank clients or whatever they are. And there are a couple of things there that have started to come up as patterns in their behavior, in what they do, like on a very practical level, because I think that we all know intuitively what empathy is. But if you ask people to break it down and tell you what it looks like and what it feels like, then they have to pause for a moment and think through, like, okay, how does this actually work in real life? And I think that the one thing that, you know, doing kind of working on our empathetic, our ability to be empathetic, is that it can help us bridge kind of the gap between technology and our biology. As humans, we haven't evolved enough to be able to deal with a vast amount of information, with complex information that keeps coming at us from all angles, and try to figure out what this looks like. And what people in cybersecurity are very good at is critical thinking and systems thinking. And that those two abilities help you cope with complexity, think, about the consequences and how they travel through systems, and help you put things together. So when you match that with empathy, a couple of things happen, and I've seen that. I think that empathy in cybersecurity creates range. So it helps you kind of broaden your view as to how you can contribute to a community like DefCamp, to helping journalists like you're doing, educate themselves, to getting involved in some other ways, to teaching students and getting, younger people to pay attention to this and not just see the internet as their playing ground, but also understand its importance for society and kind of elevate their social impact, because we now, rely on the internet for social stability, also on Earth and in space, like Paul, showed us yesterday in his presentation. I think that it also helps technical people create real change in organizations. I was just talking to Claire Pills yesterday from the Cybersecurity Collective. She actually takes on CIO roles temporarily and then helps and helps find and recruit other CIOs and tells them what the company is like, what the culture is like, so they can step in and know what they're facing and know exactly how to make the most of their experience. So there are various ways to do that. I've also talked to people who use examples that are very close to decision makers' context. So if you tell them that, they won't be able to get paid over the next 2 weeks because their systems are down, then that changes perspective like a lot. If, you show them real life examples, and unfortunately we have a lot of those. Well, not real life examples, just examples, because real life on the internet is real life off the internet as well. If you show them examples of things like not being able to go, put gas in your car, to not being able to have all of the stuff that you're used to in the supermarket. So being very real and giving tangible examples of what, it looks like when cybersecurity isn't there, or when it doesn't work, when the investment is not enough, that gets people to pay attention and to stop and consider what this looks like and what that feels like. Because I think that, again, getting people to feel the potential consequences is just as important as, or more important than getting them to kind of do that mental, logical exercise of going through what could happen. And as humans, we're not good at dealing with abstract information that's not visible and that's in the future. We're just not good at that. We haven't evolved enough to get good at that.
Speaking about real life examples, maybe Andrei could tell us a little bit about the strategies he uses to raise awareness when he talks to both his mom and his mother-in-law. Is there anything that could convince them to increase the level of security?
So I think that, as I've said, I mean, I'm of the opinion that you cannot get to a point where you say, if I throw enough technology, this solves my problem. I mean, Kevin Mitnick said something along the lines of the safest computer is turned offline, disassembled, and stored in Fort Knox or something like that. I don't know. But two things. One, and I'm going to be, let's say, taking the baton from Andra. Simon Sinek, who I deeply admire and I love to death, and I try to lead in his principles, something that my wife has taught me, says start with why. And I think that when we try to get these people on board, when we try to convince the general population that does not do cybersecurity to report a suspicious email, to not click on everything just because, oh my God, there's an invoice. What's with invoice? Were you supposed to receive a parcel? No, but I need to click it because what if? Anyhow, we don't do a very good job with articulating the why. And like Jay's example is very good. We cannot convince developers to change their practices and solve structural problems. So that's what I try to do. I try to use a lot of the analogies. Like, okay, you get out of the house, you go to the ATM machine, you do not have a wad of cash with you. You need to you put in the card, you take money. Do not store your PIN with your card. It's bad. If you do that, irrespective of what the bank does, these money will be gone. Yes, there will be behavior analysis and all of these AI and ML and all of these buzzwords and whatnot. But the fact of the matter is money gets stolen. Organizations that have security at their core get compromised. And like last year's history is public domain. So that's what I try to do. I try to use a lot of the analogy. I spend a considerable amount of time talking to C-level people. And what I found out that it helps is start with why. Why do I need to do this and that and the other? That would be a good starting point.
That's
play on their emotions.
That's a great point. Yeah, as you mentioned.
One more thing I wanted to say. Apologies, Andrada.
Sure,
I think,
no worries.
Like a nuance is probably, I think that we're sort of afraid of this human element because it's not like it's the weakest link. It's probably the link that is the most difficult to secure, because like firewall, I can put in rules, it's done, it's okay. Convincing 10,000 people to not click on emails, a much more monumental task. So that would be my sidebar comment. So yeah.
If we break this down, I think there are two verticals. One would be convincing the general audience that cybersecurity is important and they should do more about it. And the second one would be talking to C-level executives who don't necessarily have a background in cybersecurity and trying to talk to them and come up with strategies so that the security of a company is increased. Are there strategies security people could use when they talk to C-level executives within their companies? Is there anyone who would like to take this? Maybe Radu or Alex? Yeah, please go ahead.
Right. So let me lower my hand. I'm gonna say the short version and the slightly longer version. The short version is hack it all, and then show them the damage that could have been done. Unfortunately, one of the things that I've noticed is that even if you do hack them and you present them with a POC and you know, find an RC, you find a remote command execution, and you get a shell on a server, there's a very good chance that not even then will they acknowledge the severity of the situation. So just pull the data from the database and show them, see, this is what an attacker could have seen. And that's when they realize the severity of the situation. And that's when they actually start looking more into it and taking action. So the one thing that I've seen that actually works with developers as well is they will not believe the theory, they will not embrace the theory, or very rarely that's the case. You know, those are happy moments when you find a dev or when you find a person that embraces that and actually, you know, listens to you and wants to know what you want to tell them. But unfortunately, in a lot of situations, you have to actually go the next step and the next step and the next step, actually show them their data. And then they go, oh, so you see, this could have seen by somebody else. Oh, yeah, okay, we should do something about that.
But Alex, I mean, is the society ready for something like that? I mean, it's only like a month or two ago with that case in the US where a simple guy just pulled some social security numbers from the web page of the Human and Health Services from a state, and the government said, lock him up. I have instructed the DA to press charges and to lock him up for a billion years.
So this is an excellent point.
He used HTML.
He used view source.
I mean, who here remembers the case of Weave, Andrew Oriehammer, that crazy guy, who pulled the same thing from AT&T. So this is an excellent point. The society should be ready for this. And this is why we have bug bounty programs, you know? So the scope of the Bitdefender bug bounty program is literally everything with the Bitdefender logo on it. It's right there. And you can go as deep as you want, you know, because that's the way it should be, in my opinion. Unfortunately, yes, the legislature doesn't facilitate that. And most companies do not have a security contact, unfortunately. And there's no vulnerability disclosure program on most companies' websites. I fundamentally believe that those companies are less secure because people are afraid to find vulnerabilities in their infrastructure because the law doesn't allow them to. For example, I would love to try some stuff at the airport, but I know that I'm not allowed to. So in my mind, I'm thinking there's probably a ton of vulnerabilities there that I don't know about, you know?
Or there is sorry.
Go ahead.
I want to say that, complimenting you, the reverse is also true. The FDA guys, like or girls, working on the website, are afraid of people like finding vulnerabilities, are afraid of like a huge like scandal. I wouldn't say GDPR because it's in the US, but and then they say, oh, people shouldn't test our services. Like, bam, lock them up if you do like view source.
I always, when somebody says that they're afraid of me, I always tell them, you know, it's better me than somebody else, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I would go back with this idea to Radu, because I know that you spend a lot of time in Brussels and you're closer to people who are involved in policy. Do you think that there could be some policy changes when it comes to vulnerability disclosure that could help these issues? And maybe you could also tell us what are some of the strategies that you have used to talk to C-level executives.
Okay, first of all, about policies. In my opinion, the people which do not know to do anything else, they are doing meetings and policies. That's a personal opinion, although I'm spending a lot of time over Brussels, or maybe because I spend a lot of time in Brussels. I don't know. I let you choose which one of two. Now, speaking about how to approach C-level, I would like first to jump a couple of steps back to what Andra was saying earlier. And I'll spice it up a little bit, the discussion, although I see that we don't have much time left. I really think that empathy is not the way, and I will say it why. I'm really an advocate that the idea of the human element being the weakest link, we should still consider it very important. Okay, communication is definitely the key on how you approach towards everybody, C-level, not C-level, whatever. But empathy is something connected to the prefrontal cortex, so to the front part of the brain. That's where we are taught from early stages of our life. You need to do that, you are not allowed to do that, you need to do that, and all that. Even though like that, look at the children, which you're being told that, look, you're not allowed to to eat sweets, for example. What does he do? The first moment he has the possibility to get some sweets without him being noticed by anybody, he's gonna take the sweets. What I'm meaning is that in the early stages, there are still some elements connected from the primary brain part, which is the oldest part of the brain, which is the amygdala, where things related to survival instincts are more tied to the direct actions that we are after some time when we have built the human firewall, as I call it, which is the prefrontal cortex. So
a lot of people interested in neuroscience here in this panel. Maybe we should change the tag.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there is this movement that we're trying to put in a corner the primal limbic brain part, and the part which actually captures all the non-verbal of a person is not the prefrontal cortex which captures it, is the back brain, is the amygdala. That's where the decisions are taken. They're not taken in front. In front is just the political part, the policy part, as you said earlier. We have to do this, we have to do that. But if you're getting burned by a flame, you're going to remove your hand. You're not going to think and then say, oh, I need to remove my hand. So that's why.
I think the point was rather to try to have a connection with someone before you deliver knowledge. But I think Andra could explain this a little bit better. And I do feel that having both the tech knowledge and the human aspect of it allows you to have two things from two worlds and maybe have the best of two worlds to create a message that's stronger, maybe.
Stronger and more persuasive, because it is absolutely true, rather, that our most primal instincts sit in that part of the brain and they're automated. And that before our prefrontal cortex and our rational brain kicks in, there's a lot happening there. But one of the things that happens in that primal brain of ours is a mirroring effect. So that's one of the things that actually plays into empathy. That's when we mirror the other person's reactions and nonverbal behavior, like how they're sitting. When you like someone, just look at yourselves. When you like someone, and this is also obviously for whoever's watching, when you like someone, you will most likely sit and do the same gestures as they're doing without realizing it, without doing it consciously. So that's one of those automated things. I do not think that separating these things, and it's true that we need to appeal to that automated brain of ours and to teach it basically new pathways in the brain so it can react with more caution and react with more awareness. And that takes time, and that's not something that comes naturally to people. But if we only kind of come from this very let's enforce rules. I love rules. That's why I love working in cybersecurity. I love rules and structure and predictability. I love that. That's kind of my anxious self that's trying to, have some control over the world we live in. And I think that many people have the same challenge. So helping them see that cybersecurity knowledge, whether it's minimal or more advanced, gives them control over their lives, their actions, and even their own behavior. I think that that's a really good selling point, whether they're C-level people or, just regular people working at the supermarket or wherever they are. And I think that the more power people have, the higher up they are on, let's say, in a system, in a company, the more prone they are to thinking that they know everything. And when you tell them they don't know something, it will create that organic reaction, that kind of feeling in their stomach that, oh, I hate this. I'm supposed to be good at everything.
This is not very elegant of me, but I'll have to end the conversation here because we only have 5 more minutes, and I would just want to go to the more proactive part of things and talk a little bit about solutions and how things are going to change in the future. Sometimes when we talk about users, we also talk about passwords, and recently Microsoft gave users the option to get rid of passwords. Could this work? Is this a way to make everything more streamlined and more secure? Dan, what do you think?
Oh, well, I'll be really fast. Basically, I think we move from one paradigm to another. Before it was like passwords are secure, this is secure your account. Now we found out that maybe there are better ways to protect ourselves. In the past, we said human is the weakest link. Nowadays, we are saying, I don't know, blank, 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 insert something new, insert something smarter. So in my opinion, I think it's an interesting shift. Personally, I like passwords because I have a password manager, so it's not that hard for me to have 100, 200 passwords. For my mom, wink, wink, Andrei, it's harder because she doesn't use a password manager, or she says, "Oh, I have my phone with me. Where's my password manager?" Yada yada. So I think we are moving from one cornerstone to another. Change is good. And let's see what the future brings.
We only have time for a few closing thoughts. Why don't we start with Radu? Like a 30-second idea that you want us to see as a takeaway from you from this panel.
Train your people from the lowest operational level till the highest one in CX level as much as possible, as much as often.
Thank you so much. Andrei?
There's a very smart guy. His name is Paul Ulteanu, and he has a paradigm about the elephant and the rider. Highly recommend to give it a look. I think that, and as a father of twin 10-year-olds, I don't think that forbidding them stuff is the way to go, rather than explaining why it's not a good idea for things to happen. I think there isn't a silver bullet, otherwise we'd be presidents of the Council of Cybersecurity of the world and everybody would look up to us and we'd be gods. And I think that the solution lies both in well thought and well implemented technology, as well as in educating people. Thanks.
Okay, Andra?
I would like to encourage people who are watching, who are most likely already interested in cybersecurity and already kind of on their way and on their path to doing several things, to take an interest in, not to take an interest, to maybe explore two things. Read outside their field, especially psychology and neuropsychology. Those are very interesting things. They're very connected to what you're doing already and can only amplify what your work and your passion, your curiosity. And the second thing is about talking about your experience, kind of sharing what you learned, how you learn it, how it's going, what the challenges that you're going through are. I think that those are our personal example is very valuable, and you never know who will take an inspiration from it, for who it will be a trigger for growth or improvement or changing their perspective and hopefully their actions in the long run. So I hope that those two things help.
Okay, Alex?
Well, I think that one message that I would want to get across is relax. You got this. It's going to be okay. You're a professional guy. And then accept the fact that you know a small fraction of what's happening in your infrastructure. You know a small fraction of the vulnerabilities in your infrastructure. And there are a few 100,000 hackers out there with more experience and more know-how than you and your team. Once you've made your peace with that and you can be relaxed while thinking about that, then you can start threat hunting and identifying the rest of the vulnerabilities that you don't know about and the rest of the blind spots that you have in your infrastructure. But do it by treating it as something normal. It's normal to have vulnerability. It's perfectly fine.
And a few closing thoughts from Dan.
I completely agree to Alex and to what everybody else said.
That's perfect, because at some point I kind of felt that the conversation was a little bit heated. So as long as everyone agrees at the end, and we provided several ways to look at this issue, I'm super happy. Thank you so much to all of you for being here today and for trying to shed some light on this issue. I think we could talk until maybe 8 p.m. about this.
Next year.
We should definitely do that. Thank you so much again, and please enjoy your lunch.
Track 3, Cybersecurity and Neurobiology. DefCamp 2022.
We should have that. Let's lobby for that.
Exactly.
Thank you so much, Andrada. You've been the kindest host. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, guys. Bye.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.